break last Sunday. So this segment is entitled the wait, I have to make a hand gesture. OD factor.
Yeah.
The OD factor, or the organization development factor. What is it and what is it not? All right, and to talk about these in detail, as of course, we've invited someone who is just actually the president of the only organization, or the only school that is dedicated in organization development, not only in the Philippines but in Asia, and that is Southeast Asia Interdisciplinary Development Institute School of Organization Development and Planning, or SAIDI. And he is the president, who is also the vice chairman and COO of Metro Stonerich Corporation, chairman and president of Marita, Amor Hotel, and a graduate, PhD graduate of Organization Development in SAIDI, as well as Masters in Business Administration in University of California in Los Angeles. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be having joining us later on as President of SAIDI, Mr. Eliseo Aurellado.
PhD.
PhD.
Of course, for our Katropa's information, he's also a fellow reservist,
Yes.
holding the rank of Lieutenant Colonel,
Yes.
assigned at the AFP Reserve Command. Tara na mga katropa!
Hi, Aurellado. I'm the president of Southeast Asia Interdisciplinary Development Institute. It's a graduate school of OD and planning. I've been recently elected as the president of the school, and I would be serving 5 years from this year. So it's quite a challenge to head a school for the first time, and a graduate school at that. So I'm trying my very best, to bring the school, to the threshold of a better and a more enlightened OD. So that's my challenge, and that's my mission.
Wow. And welcome again to our show, Dr. Ellie.
Yes,
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I would like to greet our radio listeners a prosperous new year. Hopefully, we will be rid of COVID during this time of year and go back to our normal life.
Yes,
Yes,
I
Dr.
agree.
Ellie. I agree with you. Dr. Ellie, since you've mentioned about OD earlier, being the new president of SAIDI, which is a school, the only school in organization development and planning, not only in the Philippines, but in the whole Southeast Asia, I believe. Would you like to walk us through, so that everyone would have, sort of an expectations leveling of what organization development is all about? What is it and what is it not? Because a lot of people are getting confused these days. What is really organization development? Is it a social science? Is it similar to organization behavior, or similar to being a psychologist when you are an OD person? So these are the things that we have to probably clarify on. And would you like to elaborate that further, sir, about what OD is?
Okay, let me just give you just a background, why OD is important and why it has become such a profession. We know very well that change they say is constant. It's always there, and every time there's a change, there's a lot of impact on many organizations. In fact, even in our daily lives, you just try to misplace something. That's a change already. And it creates problems for us when we don't see the items that we normally look for in a place, and it's not there anymore. It creates some kind of discomfort for us, and that is the effect of change. Now, change can be evolutionary, or it can be radical. If it's evolutionary, then it's fine. People get adjusted to it because it comes slowly. But when it's a revolution, that's a drastic change, then there are imbalances, and in our world nowadays, we are living in what we call the VUCA world, no?
Right.
We have volatility, we have uncertainty, we have complexity, and we have ambiguity. And more organizations are challenged to cope with change, no? And this is where really OD comes in, because OD is a process and a discipline at the same time. It involves itself with planned change, meaning it doesn't react. It is a proactive kind of discipline because it is the one that initiates the change that is needed, no, to cope with the changing environment. So it's a planned process, and essentially it uses behavioral science, knowledge and practices, no, to try to, you know, gear up the company so that it becomes more effective. So in other words, OD is something that every organization needs, because whether we like it or not, no, if we do not cope with change, then as they say, no, the dinosaurs became extinct because they weren't able to adapt. So I have here a slide. If you may want to just show it, I can just walk you through some of these definitions of OD. So what is OD? As I said, no, it's a planned process of change in an organization's culture through the utilization of behavioral science, technology, research, and theory. And so this is one of the earlier definitions. And then we have Richard Beckard's definition of OD, which I actually used in my dissertation, no, about ISO being a change strategy. And it's an effort, no, that is planned. Again, no, you see the word planned, no? And it's organization-wide, meaning, you know, you involve the entire organization. And the change must come from the top, meaning, you know, it's the head honchos, the visionaries of the company that have to, you know, work through this planned effort of managing change, no? And of course, the objective is to increase the organization's effectiveness and health through intervention. So we have to, you know, put in interventions to be able to gradually bring in this change and let people embrace all these changes, no? And again, as you can see, it uses behavioral science knowledge. And the most recent definition actually is by Cummings and Worley, where they say it's a system-wide application and transfer of behavioral science knowledge to the planned development, improvement, and reinforcement of the strategies, structures, and processes that lead to organizational effectiveness. So now, if I look at this, this becomes closer now to what I am also disciplined in, no? Strategic management.
Yes,
So when we talk about strategic management, effectively, we are charting our destiny, we are charting our future. But since we are going to make a lot of changes in terms of our organizational structure, and as you know, organizations have gone from maybe the pyramidal vertical type of structure to a more horizontal type of structure. And then, of course, you have to look at your processes. And then when you implement strategies, since it affects people, of course, you have to make sure that they embrace these changes, because when you implement a strategy, you're essentially changing something. Essentially, the culture, you know, how people behave in the organization. All of these things now will lead to organization effectiveness. So from a, you know, a purely action research type of method where OD simply looks at maybe specific problems and try to resolve them using employee involvement, no, or group involvement, now it has come to a level where you now are looking at OD from a very strategic point of view. So now it has become more broad, no, in terms of its scope, and the challenges that it brings, you know, is more, I would say, more exciting for the OD practitioner now. No? That is why I look at OD as something that is very useful, very vibrant, and it's the future for all organizations. Because as you know, when you go up the organization ladder, you may be a specialist when you start at the bottom, but as you work up, you become more and more a generalist. And that's where your interaction with people, your leadership is now the thing that matters the most. No, not your technical skill, but your ability to make people align themselves to the organization's goals, you know, to see your vision and to bring them to where you want them to be, no, as an organization. So that to me is the challenge of OD.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Having said that, sir, what do you think are the similarities as well as differences of OD from other fields of social sciences, say human resources?
Yeah. Okay, the social sciences, usually we talk about anthropology, we talk about psychology, or we talk about sociology. And these are related, no, in a way to OD, because we all deal with people, how they behave, you know, their culture, their relationships, and these are actually the elements that we use from behavioral science when we start practicing OD. And now there's a misconception that when people talk of OD, they think it's pure HR, no? It's the same as HR.
Yes.
Actually, they're related in a way, and very similar. But if you look at this slide that I'm showing to you on the board, which by the way I borrowed from the author, no, Matthew Wright, you can see that HR, if you look at the routine tasks, no, or the normal task of HR, it's focused more on compliance, no? Compliance with recruitment, labor laws and rules, compliance with company policies, how people should conduct themselves within the organization, and it's all related sometimes to how do you make people perform better, no? Performance management. How do you assess them? How do you appraise them? And then we talk about job evaluations, recruitment, industrial relations, collective bargaining agreement, training and development. All of these are HR. Now, when we look at OD, okay, you will see now that while HR might be focusing on certain segments of the organization functions, you will see now that OD is actually more encompassing, because it tries now to mold a culture in a way that the CEOs or the COOs in the organization want that culture to be, in order that they can be more effective in coping with change, no? And here we also talk about maximizing employees' potential and amplify their contributions, again, no, in furtherance of the organization's success, no? And then how do you assess, no, the organization, what's happening, what are the interventions that you try to bring in to effect a positive change. So again, that's the change that we want to achieve, no? And then how do we align human behavior with the organization's strategy, structures, processes, business objectives, and so on. So now here you're trying to lead all your people towards an ultimate destination, so that everybody's aligned, no? They're all going into the same direction. And then, of course, here you have promote the organization's values throughout the workplace. Now, you try to bring in positivity in the workplace. So if you look at it and compare it with HR, it's a more challenging field, no? Because it's more strategic in character. That's why it's really, this new OD now is very exciting for HR practitioners, because it's very easy for them to transition, no, from their traditional role as HR practitioners to an OD practitioner.
Right.
And I always emphasize that to be a good OD person, you must have a strategic frame of mind, no? That you have a helicopter view of your environment, of your organization, so that you can make better decisions and you can implement changes more effectively.
All right. So the discipline is OD is really essential nowadays. Now it's really a good table that you presented to us, Dr. Ellie, about the difference of HR and OD. Now, what are its similarities in terms of learning and development? Or it's
Okay.
not learning and
Yeah.
development?
Well, learning and development usually is it's a subset of HR, no? Well, based on my readings anyway, and it's it's similar with OD in the sense that you're trying to bring something to a better state of being, or a more ideal state, no? But learning and development is usually improving group and individual performance. Okay, while OD contemplates something that's broader in scope. No, it doesn't deal mainly with groups and individuals. It deals sometimes with entire organizations, sometimes with other organizations for that matter. No, especially when we talk about mergers and acquisitions now. No, when you have two cultures now coming together, sometimes they clash. No. Sometimes they don't mix too well. And now this is where your OD practitioner comes in. To try to bring these cultures together and make them work and synergize, no, and be more effective. So that's why OD, I believe, no, that's the difference, no, between this HR and learning and development, which are just you might say just smaller segments, no, than OD as a whole.
How do you think, sir, can we teach OD for non-OD practitioners in other departments? Like, for example, there's a new supervisor or a manager who's leading people and they need to align with the OD systems or processes in an organization. How can HR, this is actually a call for HR or those who are listening to us now who would like to have that embody the OD culture in their organization. How can they teach it to other professionals within the company?
Okay. Most HR practitioners are, I think, familiar and well versed with team building. No? Team building. I had the first chance of, I was fortunate enough when I was taking up my MBA in UCLA. I joined one class of Robert Tannenbaum, one of the pioneers of sensitivity training or T groups, no? And we tackled all sorts of topics, no? It's mainly just to see how we could interact better with our group mates, no, in that class, no. So I think in an organization setting, you have a new supervisor coming in. Of course, he has to know all the people around him, no, and for him to be able to marshal the force so that they become cohesive and they are aligned to the departmental's goals, for instance, no? There's got to be some kind of an intervention where everybody gets to know each other so that they can be strengthened and really become a good team, no? So this is where the OD practitioner now comes in, and you have a lot of exercises, I'm sure you're familiar with that, Giselle, no? Where you ask everyone to, introduce themselves. They draw, and emblems, and then they try to explain, or you have somebody, they talk to each other, and then you let that person introduce that other person based on his talks, that kind of thing. And then you have exercises where they work on a project, and then they present it, or you have sometimes competition. So this is one of the interventions that you use for getting a department and a new supervisor coming in, no, to really mix well and have that chemistry to be able to be effective.
Yes, sir.
So that's one way. No?
Yes, sir. Since you mentioned earlier that it will be easier for a person in HR to transition to OD, what then are some of the things or skills that a person must learn to be able to transition to OD?
Okay. When you become an OD practitioner, essentially you are a consultant. So as a consultant, of course, you offer certain skills, no? Right now, in my own perspective is, if you want to be an effective OD consultant, you must be familiar or even well-versed, no, with how organizations operate. So in other words, let's say if you're a business enterprise, there are certain functions, no, within the organization that an audit practitioner must be familiar with, no? Let's say you should know what marketing is all about, or you should know what finance is, you should know what operations, management, no, HR. All of these disciplines are important, no, when you become a consultant, because you cannot be an effective consultant if you do not know the business, no.
Right.
In fact, in my practice as an accountant, no, our dictum is always, before we do an audit, you know, we have to sit down with the client and know their business. Because when we know the business, that's the only way that we can approach our audit effectively, and we can make recommendations that will make their operations better. So it's the same thing, no? If you're a consultant, you must be multidisciplined. That's why in SAIDI, we emphasize the word interdisciplinary, because we would like people from all sorts of disciplines to come to us, and then we teach them the rudiments of organization development, so that when they go out and they want to branch out into audit practice, then it's really very helpful for them, no, to have this already rounded you know, knowledge of all the functionalities of an organization, and they will become more effective that way. So that's one, no, being multidisciplined. Secondly, you must be able to communicate well, and that's really very important in any profession. That's very crucial, no? If you want to have your message come across well, then you must be able to communicate. And then, of course, your interaction with people, because sometimes, you know, especially in our culture, if you're doing research or you're trying to interview somebody, usually people are very shy. You know? They're very reticent about giving information about themselves. No? Unlike in the West, no, people like to talk there. No? I believe in the U.S. for some time. I know that, you know, they tell you what's in their mind. No? They do not mince words if you know, if they want you to know something. No? So, but here in our culture, no, it is different. So that's why you must have that ability to interact well with them, so that you can draw out the information that you need. No? And of course, not to be overemphasized is integrity. Because to me, you know, somebody who doesn't have integrity, who doesn't walk the talk, is not going to be very effective. You know, in the old Latin world, no, there is such a word as sincere. Sincere comes from that practice in the marketplace in the Roman world, no, where unscrupulous, you know, merchants would hide cracks in their pottery by applying wax to the cracks. Wax is in Latin is cere. So when you say sincere, that means it's a genuine vase that you're selling without crack. So that means if you are a sincere person, you're basically honest. You tell them exactly what you're capable of. You don't represent yourself as something when you're not. No? So this is why, to me, integrity is very important. Because you have to be believable, you have to be credible, because based on your expertise, based on your dealings with people, how you are open-minded and objective, those are the things that make for a good consultant. And those are the qualities that audit practitioners should have.
You mentioned earlier, sir, our Dr. Ellie, about change process, that as an OD person, you are the propeller of change. Would you like to walk us through about this?
Yes, these are actually we might call the more popular change process models. No, the first one, of course, you know very well, it's Levin's planned change model, where, you know, he looks at a certain problem. Actually, he was the one who coined the word action research. No, but then, of course, action research evolved further and became more complicated. But in Levin's model, it was essentially very simple. You look at a certain problem, for instance, and then you look at the forces that deter a proposed action, no, from progressing, or and forces that will assist it, no, in moving forward. So you have deterrent factors, and you have the factors that will facilitate, no, the movement of that action. So this is the planned change model of Levin. So here, basically, we're saying that you must minimize those forces that impede the progress and accelerate or emphasize those that will help you achieve the objective. So that is basically the planned change model of Levin. And then we have the action research model, which is actually being used extensively by SAIDI students. No? They go into an identification of a problem, and then, of course, using their expertise or in collaboration with behavioral scientist experts, they try to gather information through either interviews, and then, of course, they have this feedback mechanism, and jointly there will be a diagnosis of the problem, and then an action planning will be done, and then, of course, the expected solution, and then that goes back again to the group that's being studied, and maybe corrections will be made in the process. So there's a feedback loop that happens, no? And so this is the more common thing. But now we have this new positive model, which is also, I think, sponsored very well by Mr. Cooper Ryder. It's this positive model, no, appreciative inquiry, where you have, you try to emphasize the positive qualities of an organization. You try to minimize, no, the problems or the weaknesses, no. So you build on what makes people excited about the organization, and then you try to make them envision something, and they move towards that. No? So essentially here, if you look at it, it's basically strategic management. No? All of these things actually is just plain strategic management if you're looking at it from a broader point of view, no? Because you want to bring something to a desired state. And that's the same thing with strategic management. You have a vision, you have a goal that you want to achieve. Now you're here, so you analyze, what's keeping you from getting there, and then you try to look at the processes or the strategies that you will have to use now to be able to achieve that goal which you have envisioned. So essentially, these are what the change process models aim for. No, it's really to bring us to a better state of being.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir,
Thank you, sir.
having talked of earlier, we've talked about SAIDI being the new president. If you can kindly share also, what is the unique value proposition of SAIDI from other schools? Yes, sir.
Okay. Aside from the fact that SAIDI is a pioneer, no, in organization development, it was established sometime in 1975. No, it was founded by a missionary nun by the name of Jackie Blondin. No? She was the first one who got her PhD degree from Michigan University on a distance learning mode, no? Or a blended learning mode. And this is what we've adopted. That's why when this school was established in the 70s, no? It was still DEX, not SHED, that was really a governing institution, educational institution to them. No? And they didn't know where to place SAIDI because it's a graduate school from the start, no? In OD, but it's using distance learning, blended learning, what we now call as normal these days, no? Because of COVID.
True.
We've done that many years back, no? So in that sense, we're really pioneers, no? And of course, the unique thing about our program is that, we are not governed by the calendar year, meaning you can enroll anytime, And we have a syllabus where we will give you your module, and it outlines there what you need to do to research on. You have your set of bibliography, your reference books that you will have to read through, and then you craft, you come up with a research of the theory of your module, and then its application in your workplace, no? Because we try to marry, the rigor of theory and the relevance of practice.
Yes.
So each module, you're given several modules, no? And each module is being supervised, by a mentor. So it's a one-on-one thing, no? And it's very flexible. You can arrange to meet anywhere, anytime. That's convenient for you. So the mentor acts like a guide. You, as the candidate, you're self-paced. You can drive yourself at a fast pace or a slow pace, depending on how you want your progress to be. So this happens. And then the other good thing about our program is, if you are experienced already in certain fields, where we have modules corresponding to it, what we do is we evaluate your experience, your expertise, and then we give you the credit. So we have some people here who have actually credited their experience to the cognate modules that we have. And that way, they get to get their degree faster. Because now, in lieu of the research that they have to do on certain subjects, since they're already masters of these subject matters because of their expertise and experience, we give them already the benefit. Now, the other thing that we're also doing, which makes some of our public seminars very useful to those outside, who have not contemplated to enroll in our PhD or master's programs, we give certain units to the participants, if they complete, let's say, a public seminar that runs for 8 sessions, for instance. So we give them something like maybe 4 to 6 units, and then they can use this later on when they enroll, and this can be credited, to some of the modules. So that way, you attend our public seminars, and they're structured in such a way that we give the theory and the practice, and it's a very exciting kind of program, because you will never be idle. When we do our programs, there's self-assessment, there's group discussions, there are lecturettes, all of these things we combine together. We have videos, so it's a very good learning experience. That's why my invitation is for everybody out there who's interested to get their PhD or master's degree without attending classes at all, and they are self-driven, and they are into research, and we teach them how to do research. Then they can actually go for their degrees, which they may find useful, especially if they're in the academe. And that's actually one of the reasons why I enrolled in SAIDI, because I needed my PhD, since I was the cluster chair for finance in the Ateneo Graduate School of Business at that time, and I needed that degree to really give me the credentials. And it works wonders, because when you attend international conferences and you give them your calling card, you're mingling with people from all, from every university that you can think of, globally, and they are all PhDs. So you have your own card, and it says PhD. So you're at par with them, You're your peers, Unlike if you're there, you just have an MBA, for instance. It's not as, you might say you're not at par. Just put it that way, So it helps. I have, let's say, a colleague who doesn't have a master's or not a PhD, but he's lecturing on a subject matter that he's already an expert of. But sometimes when he speaks to international forums, he doesn't have the credentials, So sometimes he doesn't come across as a credible person, although he's a very, he's an expert in his own particular area. So this is the thing. I'm inviting everyone out there who doesn't have to go to classes anymore, especially during COVID, where we're all quarantined in our own homes, most of us anyway. You can do your learnings via our format, and before you know it, before COVID even gets away, you might have already your master's or your
Yeah.
PhD, no? So that's my invitation, and you'll find it an exciting field to go into.
Yes, sir. What website or contact details would you want to give them so that they could contact SAIDI, sir?
Okay, we have a website. No, you just Google SAIDI, and it should appear. No, SAIDI. So sometimes there's SAIDI, but that's in the Middle East. No, it's not our school. You should find. It should say SAIDI Graduate School. Then there's Tak Antipolo. That's where the campus is. No. And when you scroll through that, then you should be able to get all the information that you need. And if you're interested, you just write our registrar, okay, or you just send us an email, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. And mind you, our fees are not that expensive, Giselle. No, you might have. We have flexible payment terms, and if you have problems paying your tuition fees, we're trying to make arrangements already with a bank that can give locals, no, anyway, a loan facility that can actually tide them over for the payment of their tuition fees. So those are the, and also as an academic graduate school, we're trying to be globally recognized. No, we are using plagiarism softwares. We have a learning management system. We're trying to join up with certain outfits that will publish dissertations or theses, so that we, the global world will be aware that there is a SAIDI out there somewhere. We're trying to get ourselves accredited, first locally, then hopefully globally. So these are some of the initiatives that we are doing, just to be able to, bring us into the, the forefront of OD, and hopefully we can be successful.
Sir?
Thank you so much, Sir Dr. Eliseo Aurellado, for that very enriching discussion with you, our first interviewee for the year, and in the unveiling of our segment in OD. Would love to hear from you again, Dr. Eli, in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Giselle, and your, of course, your better half. Or better half. Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. And
thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eli.
I hope, Giselle, you complete your PhD soon.